Welcome back to the channel. Today we're painting the Battlefield 3 M16. Probably don't need that. Alright, let's put a coat of paint on this thing. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the agency. Your mission, if you choose to accept it, is to clone your favorite gun from a video game. Today we're chilling, painting. This is going to be more of a chill video, right? We're going to listen to some lo-fi beats, some low fidelity music. We're going to paint a little bit. We're going to etch lowers. We're going to wrap stocks. We're just going to hang out together and we're going to enjoy this experience, I think. So go ahead and grab some coffee, pop a zen. Let's go on this journey together. But first, I have to tell the story of Battlefield 3 and my love for that game. The year was 2011. Adele, LMFAO, and Carly Rae Jepsen dominated the airwaves. Charlie Sheen was winning. Rebecca Black told us her favorite day of the week. And behind every blade of grass was an old guy named Chuck Testa.
You probably thought this deer was alive.
It was a great time for gaming as well. Halo, Fallout, and Call of Duty had been delivering absolute bangers for years. I was in the 6th grade when I first heard about a little game called Battlefield 3. Now I had played Battlefield Bad Company 2, and veteran gamers told me how great Battlefield 2 was, and they said that Battlefield 3 was also going to live up to the hype. In March of 2011, the Fault Line trailer dropped. It showcased US Marines in a firefight in a Middle Eastern city. It looked good, but it didn't show multiplayer. It wasn't until June 6th, 2011 that they dropped the Operation Metro multiplayer trailer. This trailer had me so hyped I would download it on school computers just to watch it over and over again. I vividly remember being in my 7th grade Spanish class, listening to Pumped Up Kicks and watching this trailer. Looking back, that's probably not a great combination in a school, but hey, what can I say? As time went on, more and more trailers would drop, and the hype kept building. I still get chills when I watch the official release trailer and the Caspian Border trailer because they're just bangers. I was an Xbox 360 gamer and I never really played a game like this. COD was great and so was Bad Company 2, but nothing could prepare me for Battlefield 3's hype marketing. I played the open beta with my friends, and that's when I first met her. The M16A3, a weapon so broken it dominated servers for almost a year before they finally nerfed it. Its fire rate and reload speed made Lucas Bakken look like, well, this. This gun was seriously broken. Think Modern Warfare 2 ACR or Black Ops Commando. The gun was an instant classic. I played Battlefield 3 for literally years. I even refused to buy Battlefield 4 when it came out because I refused to let Battlefield 3 go. Of course, all good things come to an end. I would go on to buy an Xbox One, later PlayStation 4, and Battlefield 4. Don't get it twisted, Battlefield 4 is great, but Battlefield 3 was very special to me and the first to do it, whereas Battlefield 4 was basically just Battlefield 3 with worse maps, an orange tint, and rubber banding problems. It's games like Modern Warfare 2, New Vegas, or Battlefield 3 that leave a lasting impact on you. Memories you'll always have, experiences with friends and strangers that you'll never hear from again. It brought us together, and gaming will never be the same. And that's why I dedicated this build to Battlefield 3. So let's get into the painting of this gun. The gun in game has a specific paint job. It's a tan paint job. The setting of the game is an Iraq and Iran.
It's Iran and Iraq, not Iran and Iraq.
So I went out and I had some Rust-Oleum cans of paint already, and I thought I might make good use of them. Took the gun, it was all black, right? I actually used this gun in my Modern Warfare 2 video, but it was in a little bit of a different configuration. So I took the black rifle and I threw some coats of the brown paint on top of it first. Before I put the sand color paint on top, my thought process was I wanted the sand paint to be have a little bit of a brown tint to it. The gun in game, it's kind of hard for me to determine the exact color that the gun in game is because The color grading is kind of weird in Battlefield 3. There's like these blue tints going on. Some maps are like a little more orange. So it's kind of challenging to tell exactly what the color of the gun is. So I just went with the Rust-Oleum, the tried and true. And the stuff isn't the greatest. After I coated both sides in the brown, I went over the whole thing with a tan paint and kind of let that dry for a little bit. Kind of hard for it to dry in the humidity. After that, I went over the right side of the gun and added the streaks. When you start painting a gun, it feels like making pancakes. The first one you always kind of mess up, and then when you get in the groove of things, it starts to get better. And that was kind of my thought process when I was painting this gun. I was like, well, you know, the right side of the gun isn't seen as much in game as the left side is. The left side obviously is what you see in first person mode. So the right side I'm going to start with, and if it's a little bit incorrect, it'll be okay because it's not really as known in people's minds what that looks like. So I went in, I took some reference photos in game of the M16 from angles that aren't really readily available on Google Images. So I went through and just copied the streaks as best as I could. It's pretty decent for what it is. It could be a little bit better, but I am happy with it. Now, the real challenge is when I flipped the gun over and I painted the left side of the gun. The left side, I figured I had to get that a little bit more right than the right. I had to get the left side of the gun almost perfect, and I didn't really succeed, but I got it pretty close, I think. So I took the brown paint and I started doing my streaks again, but I was noticing some issues here. I was getting some sputter from the paint, and it was kind of getting onto the tan underlayer in areas I didn't really want it to. For whatever reason, my muzzle device, I guess, on my can of paint, the little, what do you call it? The little where the paint comes out, basically the can of paint was sputtering and it was getting little dots on the tan, and I didn't really want that. It was less of an issue than I thought it was going to be, but I wasn't a big fan of that. So I would go in with a brown streak, and then it wouldn't be in the right spot. It wouldn't be perfect. So I was like, okay, well, let me start again. I'd go over with the tan streak, and I kept doing this over and over again. And meanwhile, the layers are building, and I'm not giving it ample time to dry. So I was running into issues with that. So eventually I had to calm down, take a breather, let it dry for a little bit, and I asked my wife, I said, hey, I need you to go out. She's an actual artist, so I was like, I need you to get the streak right because I can't get it. My aim is way off. So she was like, okay, I got you. So she went out and she got the right streak. However, that sputtering and stuff was still an issue. So what I decided to do was kind of let the gun chill for a little bit and dry, and go in and detail it with a brush. So that's what I did. I sprayed a little bit of the spray paint in a plastic cup, which if you didn't know this, don't do that because it'll melt the plastic. I learned that the hard way. But anyway, I sprayed it into a cup. I took a paintbrush, dipped it in that, and then I kind of just went through and touched it up and thinned out some of that brown streak. Brown streak was my middle name growing up. So I went through and that's what I did. So I ended up getting the streaks down a little bit better, so it came out the way I wanted it to. On the stock, there's a little bit of brown that's close to the charging handle. That I added a little bit of brown there and just did a little bit of detail work with the brush. So that was the paint job. It came out pretty good. If I was going to do it again, I would probably actually go with a lighter color, maybe like a more khaki, and that would be the route I would take, I think. Level cap did a pretty good one. Some pictures the M16 looks almost gray, and then some pictures it looks tan, so it's kind of hard for me to figure out like the exact color that it needs to be. Now let's talk about the etching. The etching for this gun was something that I had not heard about previously. I said before in my other video that I was trying to find an M16A3 lower. Nobody makes that. The only way for you to get an A3 lower is if you do the etching yourself, or you send it to a custom shop that will mark an 80% lower. Spoiler alert, there's not that many out there because people are afraid to touch 80% and work on them because there's that whole, if you make your own firearm, it's legal, but if you send it somebody else to do it, it starts to become a gray area. So there's some people that won't even touch a lower receiver or etch it for that reason. So I figured out I had to do this on my own, and the way that a method that I had discovered was kind of through the retro bros. Before the world of H&R, M16A1 and A2 lowers, people had to buy their own 80%, they're usually raw aluminum, and they had to etch their own M16A1 lowers. A3s still don't exist. Palmetto needs to make them. So I decided, I was like, you know, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this right. I'm going to etch M16A3 into the lower. So I went to dogfightinc.com and I bought one of these stencils that sticks onto the lower. Now, the only trick is you can't etch over, with this method at least, anodized aluminum. So I took my lower and a little sandpaper, a little elbow grease, and my love for Battlefield and just went to town. I scraped off and sanded off the anodizing in the places that I needed to mark the lower. And once it was nice and silver, I took my stencil and put it over the lower, and it was ready to etch. Now you're asking, well, that's all fine and dandy, but how do you actually etch the thing? Well, get a 9-volt battery, 2 wires with alligator clips, a Q-tip, and some salt water, and you're able to actually burn through aluminum. And that is how these fake roll marks are achieved. So took a little 9-volt, I hooked up a wire to the positive terminal and grounded it to the receiver. Then I took another wire, connected that to the negative terminal, and then the other end I connected to a Q-tip that I dunked in salt water. For whatever reason, a chemical reaction is created when you do this, and when you push it onto some nice raw aluminum, it will sizzle, and that's how you know it's working. I noticed I had to ground it to another portion that was raw on the receiver because I tried to put it on a piece of anodized aluminum and it wasn't working for whatever reason. There's something scientific going on here that is way above my head when it comes to anodizing, because anodizing isn't really paint. It's like a process. It's a reaction that, you take raw aluminum and you like put it in some sauce and it reacts in some way and then it becomes anodized. And that anodizing is, I guess, that chemical reaction doesn't work with this method. That's why it needs to be raw. Now, I wasn't that good, especially when I first started. I realized it takes a little bit to actually burn through it and for it to look good. Some portions of this are a little bit shallow, more shallow than I wanted it to be. If I were doing it again, I would just really take my time and try to get it right. And I would change Q-tips regularly. The Q-tips will start to get black and dirty, and you just reverse it and keep going if you want to keep it nice. If you want to keep it burning consistently and well, change your Q-tips regularly if you plan on doing this. So that's how I etched the lower. I didn't do as good of a job on the selector switch markings. I just sanded in the wrong places. The auto marking looks okay, but I could have done better. My main focus though was that lower that says M16A3, just because I'm proud of my that I have a A3 marked lower. Even if it doesn't look that good, I'll just pretend like it's a bad roll mark job. Let's talk about the stock. Now the stock is iconic in the game, and I didn't realize why they wrapped it until somebody in the comments, I think a few people actually in the comments, told me what wrapping the stock is actually for. Let's say, for example, that you wanted free college and job skills, so you ended up in the Middle East fighting in a war, and you were carrying your M16 rifle around, and you realized that when you shouldered it, your sweet little cheeks were getting burned in that hot desert sun. So your solution? Wrap the stock in some kind of goon tape, or Camo Form is another brand that makes this kind of tape that you can wrap the stock in, and it prevents it from getting too hot or too cold depending on your environment. So that's the reason that stocks are wrapped. Given the setting of the game takes place in the desert, it makes sense that the Marines are wrapping their stocks so that when they get that cheek weld, they're not burning their cheeks. I feel a little bit better now knowing that information. So like if I take this to hang out, like if I go hang out with somebody, we go shooting, I don't want to look like a pleb, even though it kind of looks pleb. I don't want to look like too much of a pleb with a wrapped stock. Like, why'd you wrap the stock? I'd be like, I don't know, because it's in Battlefield. But now I have a reason where I can say, oh, well, it gets hot out. I have to have a comfortable cheek weld. So that's my justification now. How I achieved this stock, how did I do this? Well, I said it before, I took a little bit of burlap and I wrapped the stock, but the burlap was just not gonna hold. I even put a little spray adhesive on the stock itself and then put the burlap over it, and it did adhere fairly well to the stock, but the issue was that it was fraying. There's actually some portions of this that I can see sticking out that are still fraying. The stuff was just not strong. I don't know if you need to starch the material to actually get it to not do that, but it was just fraying. It was just not going to survive even the most mild of flat range trips. It was just not going to hold up. So what I ended up doing was taking some medical wrap and just wrapping over some of that burlap to add a little bit of like fluffiness to it. The one in game looks like it has a little bit of fluff. It's not so tightly wrapped around the stock. It looks a little bit loose. So I said, I'll just keep the burlap under to add a little bit of that texture and then just wrap that medical tape over. The medical tape acts similarly to a Camo Form where it kind of adheres to itself and it can get wet and stuff like that without it totally falling apart. Of course, it being medical tape, it was pure white and I needed to change that a little bit. So what I ended up doing was a little method I learned when I got into bolt action minis, which is basically Warhammer for people that like World War II. I went through a season where I painted these little models, and I learned a little bit about painting at that time, a little bit about highlights and your recesses and your washes and dry brushing. So dry brushing, if you don't know what it is basically taking a brush, dipping it in some paint that's preferably mixed with water already, and then you take that brush and you wipe it on some paper towel to get most of the paint off, but you still leave a little bit of residual. And when you take your brush now and you apply it to your object, you get a little bit of paint here and there on the model. So if you're painting like an airplane or a tank, for example, and you want to show rust or paint chips, stuff like that, you can dry brush it with certain colors and it will only put it in certain spots sparingly. So that's what I decided to do with this stock. I just did, this dry brushing with a little brown paint and just kind of hit it and kind of dirtied it up while still keeping the stock relatively dry and not saturating it with paint, and hitting the raised sections of the material with that brown paint so that it's kind of gives it that dirt sand effect. Of course, as I use the gun more, it's going to get actually dirty and sandy, and that will look even better. But my main concern was worrying if the actual tape itself was going to hold up. Would it even make it far enough to get dirty, or would it just start to fall apart by that point? So it is what it is. And then I took a little like a little mixer bottle. I put a little black paint, mixed some water in it, and then just kind of squirted this black ink solution that I made onto different parts of the stock that are stained in the game, just to give it that stained effect and to give it truly that Battlefield 3 look. And of course, I just covered the thing in rubber bands, and that was the end of that. So if I were going to do it again, I would probably just skip the burlap altogether and just wrap it in medical tape or buy one of those goon tapes and do it that way. That's pretty much all there is to it. Like I said, I won't get into the specifics of the parts. You can go watch my other video for, this rail and, this grip and et cetera, et cetera. This is just more of a chill video to talk about a little more of the autistic details, if you will, the autistic details. If you enjoyed this video, go watch another video of mine. Go click on the recommended video that it gives you. That's my video. Go watch the Battlefield 3 video if you haven't seen that already. And if you want to support the Patreon, I do have that available. I have 4 dudes in there. I got Matt, Mad Bro, Jacob, and Jake. And they are all very kind givers, and I appreciate each and every one of you guys for giving me a little bit of your hard-earned coin. And if you do want to join, we have a Discord. There are no feds in it as of yet, so I think we're doing pretty well so far. Unless Jake is a fed, I'm not sure yet, but I digress. Gentlemen, thanks for watching the video, and thanks for hanging out with me. And comment your favorite video game gun that you want to clone, and if you want to build an M16A3, I say you do it. Thanks for watching, and have a good rest of your day.